record. Hi. Okay,
Hello.
we'll start with brainiology. All right. Brains change constantly. So brainiology for me was something that was really interesting. Learning about fixed mindsets and growth mindsets. This was like, even though this is like super cited, there's a lot of other pieces in here. It's not just a straight piece about everything, and it is all about the bigger thing of what brainiology is, how they started doing it, like implementing it in classrooms. It was really interesting to me because it resonated with me as how for so long I thought I had a fixed mindset and like battling that and what that looked like. Most of my annotation was all about that. And it was super interesting to see how it didn't really matter how like kids grew up with money or not money or the situations that they were in. It had more to do with like how they were treated, and it changed everything for them.
Yeah, I really like the whole whenever they said if they work hard at it, it means they aren't good at it, but if they don't work hard, then they don't do well.
Yeah.
Like just because you have to work hard at something doesn't mean you're not good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people, yeah, like some things just come naturally to some people, but just because it doesn't come naturally to you doesn't mean that you're not good at it. I think I always kind of had that mindset too, because like I was never like that great in high school, but I never really applied myself. And now that I'm applying myself, I'm like, okay, I can actually like do this. I
Hmm.
feel the same way. Growing up, I quit a lot of sports because I thought you just like you either had it or you didn't. And then my first time in college, I just did not do well because I had that fixed mindset, and I also didn't really know how to study either, like properly. So yeah, I related to this text a lot as well.
Yeah, it was just so interesting in so many ways. And I thought I kept questioning like, where's the research on where some of these kids are now? Like, what does it look like for them now? What did they do? And what about the kids who were kind of stuck in that fixed mindset? Um, it was just so, it was interesting. I'm gonna look at some of my annotations real quick.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah, that's the part where they say like they don't want to make mistakes and feel dumb, and most of all, they don't want to work hard and feel dumb, so they simply retire.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
so interesting how we, even like as young kids in that situation with a fixed mindset, still try to control people's perceptions of us because at such a young age we cared so much what they thought, so we wouldn't apply ourselves so that we didn't end up looking less intelligent or
Yeah,
feeling stupid, which is just wild because you don't even know that you're doing that as a kid, but that's what you're doing. But then as an adult you look back and are like, oh, I held myself back so much, like why did I do that?
that's exactly what I did. I feel like I feel like I have a growth mindset now, but at times when I'm like struggling with an assignment, I kind of like feel myself going back to that set or fixed mindset.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the why.
It feels like it's almost like because it's ingrained in you, right? And that was
Yeah,
kind of something that I had written in my narrative, that it's something that you almost always have to battle because at such a core place in your life, it was there, it was created situationally for you in some ways. So you constantly are moving towards a growth mindset. But once you have that awareness to get there to the other side, you can do it. But it's just all that work that you have to do.
right. Yeah, and I think like the difference between now and then is like I would just give up, but now it's just like I just keep going even if I'm gonna fail. Like I just keep pushing through.
Yeah. Do you find that the
Well,
failure
that
is
too.
part of it for you now because you learned something from it?
I think so. I just am like so scared of failing, and then especially when it comes to like college, like I want to get somewhere with my life, and I think like I just want to get there like right now. So
Yeah.
if, like failing, I feel like it's just gonna prolong all that. But I think I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but as long as you just
Yeah.
keep pushing through, it's like you're growing somehow.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like when I was younger, I was more afraid of failing because of what it meant, and now I'm not excited to fail, but failing feels like its own achievement because now I
Yeah,
know how to do it the wrong way. So now I know how to do it the right way.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And even if you fail, you just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. All
Yeah, then
right.
to the
Do
part where it's like often when children stop working in school, parents steal this by reassuring their child how smart they are. We can see now that this simply fans the flames. It confirms the fixed mindset and makes kids all the more certain that they don't want to try something difficult, something that can lose them, something that could lose them their parents' high regard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that. So yeah, 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 yeah. No, I can relate to that one too.
Yeah, I think that it's just crazy how many like factors went into it. Like there was parents and we were afraid of letting them down, and then there was teachers, and then there was peers, and it kind of makes me think about the Superman and Me piece that we had to read, where the Indian students would act different around their friends and their teachers. You know, it's that like social expectation that you have around certain groups of people. So
Yeah.
it's just crazy though that like that all of that fundamental stuff psychologically affects you. You don't even realize it. It's the same thing as kind of like trauma in your life. Things happen to you, PTSD. It just all compounds, but then it wires your brain differently. It's just wild.
Yep, I can relate to that one tenfold.
Hmm.
That is, it's speaking my language right there. All right, you want to go to the impact of property?
Yeah.
That's not the right word. Poverty. That came out weird.
All right.
Yeah, this one that kind of stood out to me. It's like they said instead they have what researchers call a fixed mindset, or the idea that intelligence and skills are more like foot size or eye color, an unchangeable trait. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like they believe that like what they were born into is what they're just gonna be.
Yeah.
Like let's say like they were like born and their family is in the freaking cartel or like a gang or something. They're like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on that and not like trying to get out of that. And like better, yeah, just like they think that whatever they're born into is what they have to do.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so interesting because it's like socially around them, all of these things are happening. So they feel trapped. It's kind of like living
Yeah.
in a certain neighborhood. It's hard to get out of that neighborhood sometimes until maybe you get a little bit older and you can't get into that neighborhood. There's not a house for sale, there's not a house for rent. So you move into another neighborhood and then you realize that that neighborhood has other opportunities for you.
Yeah.
It's just this small, simple mindset, but it's like you get trapped in that. And
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely the fixed mindset on that one. I'm trying to see what
Yeah.
else is in this one. I feel like this just kind of reiterates the brainiology one. It's just basically saying like it's more of a problem in impoverished or poverty community.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but students who live in poverty. Okay, and then the problem some advocates say is that more than half of all American children who live in poverty have the wrong mindset. The problem is that more than half of all American children live in poverty, which is crazy too, because then
Yes.
you're listening, you're like seeing that all of these kids are in this situation, but what are we actually doing to make it better? And the things that are happening around them, I just moved from Florida not that long ago, and they just took away like the free school lunch for everyone. And it's just crazy
I saw that.
because you're just like sitting there going like, okay, but it's kids in school eating lunch. Why is this an issue? What does it matter
Yeah.
what it costs? Just make sure they have food. They have the
Yeah.
option. If they don't get it, they don't get it. But why? And it's the same thing. Are we keeping them in poverty for a reason? And it really feels like at the end of the day, we are, and we're
Yeah.
just ruining human beings' lives.
Yeah, on that, my annotation on that sentence right there was, I said, I wish I could, exclamation point, this.
Yeah.
It's like, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
I think the whole point of using children in this too, because I think it goes for everybody. So there's different classes of people, there's different races, and all of these things that live in poverty. There are higher levels of certain people in those situations as well. But I think when they use children, they really are trying to get to the core point, because people always resonate with children. Save the children, do this for the children. Yeah. It makes it easier for people to be like, oh, wait, they're children, they can't help it, so let's help them. And I think that this is like the start of a bigger thing, I hope, because, living in New Orleans, like I'm over in like Marigny and Bywater, and some days it's crazy to see the amount of people on the streets. Like it's a little bit disheartening to see, because you're just like, who is doing what for these people? And of course, full amount of things out there that plenty of people don't take advantage of. But it's just crazy because then I think about them as kids, like how did they get there? And then what was their school?
I do the same thing. There's this guy that stands on Broad and what is that right there? I think Tulane, right in front of the jail. Like on that corner, young guy, and every time I see him, his name just completely escaped me, but every time I see him, like young dude, whole bunch of face tats, I give him money every single time. One of the nicest people I've ever talked to in my life. I mean, briefly, because it's like whenever the lights red, like I'll stop and say hey to him, and I'm just like, yeah, like how did you get here? Like he's not like one of those homeless people or the ones that ask for money that are like knocking on your window and like come on and like if you give them like $1, they're like really like only $1. Like he is like, one time I literally only had like $2 in my wallet, and I was like, dude, like I'm sorry, like this is like all I have. He's like, no, like thank you so much, like just one of the nicest humans I've ever talked to in my life. And I'm like, yeah, how did you get here?
Yeah,
like he doesn't seem like a dumb kid at all.
No, and I think when you read an article like this, it starts to make sense too, because you're just like, so if you grew up in poverty and these are the only things you saw, you thought that everything else was kind of unachievable or unattainable, and school wasn't a priority for you. And no matter how many times somebody told you you're smart or this or that, you felt like you could only live up to what was around you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And not to mention when children go through trauma and we ask them, like, where is the, well, consequently, we routinely demand that children in the worst situations of life, through no fault of their own, that they somehow magically set aside those lives when they walk into school. It's wild.
That's one that I annotated too.
It's just wild because we expect them to be adults. We expect them to process it and just power through it. You have to get through this, and we force them to compartmentalize everything. We teach them how to not process their trauma.
Yeah, that one I think also ties into laziness does not exist, but unseen barriers do.
Yeah.
That one plays in with that one as well.
Yeah, they all kind of overlap in this way that I think really helps to help a lot of people understand, like maybe how they got into this point, especially because in community college you see, I mean, in higher education in general, but in community college you see people starting to go for their AA. You see people who started a long time ago and come back. You see people who are trying again. You see new college students who are maybe didn't get into universities right away. You know what I mean? You see all of those things. So it's just interesting how they all play off of each other so well.
Yeah, no, they really do. All of these like overlap in a very good way.
Yeah. Okay, so then the other ones, review your annotation of the group. Yes, review your annotation of the group. Yes. And then according to Dweck, what do people in our society value? What should they value? Do you agree with the author about what people value or should value? Okay, so that
people in our society value money and looks and having the nicest things, and what they should be valuing is people's compassion and understanding of one another, and that's just not something that's important to most people nowadays.
Yeah. I think people should be valuing experiences as well. You know, we don't value experience. We value vacation and self-care, but we don't value the experience of getting to know someone else, of getting to see somebody else's perspective. We don't get that same value like dollar for dollar that you do when you go and buy a new phone, you go and buy a new pair of shoes, you go on that vacation so you can take those pictures on Instagram and stuff like that. I think experience is the biggest thing because you learn so much from experience. It's really similar to like the older I get reading a book, the like perspective that you get from the experience of I'm reading a book. Well, I'm listening to a book right now, but it's RuPaul and it's a memoir about his life. And it's so interesting because there's, you know, you can take something from everybody's life and you can be like, oh, they went through that too. And you don't feel so alone, or you can get joy in like, oh yeah, you got out of that situation too. So it's just that like broadening your horizons.
Yeah. I agree. What potential obstacles or criticisms might arise when promoting a growth mindset in a community college classroom? I feel like maybe somebody might think that. No, I was going to say somebody might think that if you're promoting a growth mindset, you might think that like you're better than everyone.
Maybe, yeah.
In a
I
sense,
think that's good. Yeah.
I don't know how to explain that.
I think that promoting a growth mindset is kind of difficult because you're potentially asking people to step outside their comfort zone and do things they might fail at. So I also think you run that risk of people shutting down. You run the risk of putting people in uncomfortable situations that aren't life ending, but feel like they are to some people. And I think that you run the risk of people getting upset and dropping classes, not doing very well. You run the risk of kind of running students off maybe. And also pushing people in fixed mindsets deeper into fixed mindsets. I can't do that. I don't want to. I can't do that. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. I've actually, my boyfriend like preached the growth mindset to me, and I was always just like, yeah, whatever, okay. Like roll my eyes, like, okay, whatever, you're better than me. So I totally think that's a good point.
Yeah, I've kind of had that run into with my boyfriend whenever I was talking about getting back in school, because he's in his like he's about to be in his last semester at UNO, and I'm at my first semester, and I'm in my second semester, which is summer. But before I started, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I was like, I've been out of school for 12 years. Like, I was like, I'm going for a hospitality like management degree, but towards like event management. I was like, I already basically run my bar and music venue. Like, why am I doing this? And he was like, dude, he's like, get your degree. He's like, it's like, if we move, he's like, that's going to get you like really far. Like having that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, like pretty much convinced me to get out of that mindset of why am I doing this? Like I already basically run a music venue as it is.
Yeah. And you have to think about those things too. I think in the growth mindset, you're also looking at how these things benefit you. And one of the other articles we read, I think it wasn't brainiology. I forget exactly which one it was because I read so many, but there was talking about how people put more value on certifications than they do degrees sometimes. And it was, you know, we don't think about the longer impact of that certification. How far will that really get you? What type of an impact will that have? You know, you might spend this money and it may be less time, but are you going to get that benefit?
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. I cannot think of the name of it right now, though. It was one of the first ones that we read.
Yes. Okay. And then Flannery raises the question whether a focus on growth mindset is just another way of blaming individual students for problems that are institutionalized and overwhelming. What does this quote mean? Do you agree with the quote? A focus on growth mindset is just another way of blaming individual students for problems that are institutionalized and overwhelming. I think I'm going to go back so I can read that because I want a little bit more context.
Focus on growth mindset is just another way of blaming individual students for problems that are institutionalized and overwhelming. I wonder if that has to go with, like whenever they're saying how like the teachers like praise them like, just for trying. even though they did it incorrectly, instead of being like, hey, you did a really good job at this, like of trying, but here's the right way. Like, let's keep trying to get it correct.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of something that was like instilled with us because I feel like growing up, teachers never wanted to like put kids down. I guess in a way, like if they did something like incorrectly, there was like, oh, like good job, but still here's like a B or like a C.
Yep.
I feel like, yeah, that might be kind of what it's talking about. Focus on growth mindset is just another way of blaming individual students for problems that are institutionalized and overwhelming.
Now I'm trying to find the quote because in my context is important, so I need to read
Yeah.
it. 85% control to this. Significant. I'm probably reading over it somewhere.
Flannery.
Yeah,
That is poverty.
that's what I thought. Okay.
It's growth mindsets and situations, defect ideology.
Oh, I found it. It says, but is a focus on growth mindset just another way of blaming individual students for problems that are institutionalized and overwhelming? Is it another way of saying, hey, if you can't succeed, then there must be something wrong with you?
Okay. I mean, no, yes and no. I think so. I think on a broad spectrum, yes, because it doesn't fit everybody. So it's difficult sometimes because you're going to have, once you start to create that whole fixed mindset, growth mindset, you start to work in that, you're going to find new problems. You're going to find people who do not fit in the fixed mindset, growth mindset. They go in between. There's going to be a new category. So I think yes and no, it does create an excuse for some people. It does create problems. But I also think that in the larger world, like it really does help. But it'll highlight other inequities at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like with anything, like when you look at the entire part of it, you look at everything, right? You go, oh, okay, so at first we didn't like this, now we like this. Now we don't like this because now this has changed into this, right? You know what I mean? It's like as soon as you open Pandora's box, everything changes and you go down and there's more details to it. So I think just as helpful as it can be, eventually it becomes problematic, but because it's usually stationary, it's not always evolving to get better, to be better. Eventually somebody doesn't keep up with the research and all of that.
She does go on to say the problem some advocates say is not that the more than I don't know why that doesn't make sense to me. More than half of all American children who live in poverty have the wrong mindset. The problem is that more than half of all American children live in poverty.
Yeah, and I think it's just a bigger part of the whole issue is we're not really focusing on what the real problem is, and we're still trying to figure out more of like how we can fix it versus how we can stop it from happening in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 7 minutes left because mine just popped up and said the 10-minute thing. They only have 10.
So it's okay. So it's doing it to all of us then.
Yeah, it's probably like a daily limit or something. Okay,
Yeah.
so the next thing we have to do is we just have to talk about our papers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I told you guys a little bit about mine, and then I'll go, but I want you guys to have time. So go over discussions. Yep, discuss your literacy narrative choices. You can talk about what you intend to write about. What is your literacy narrative going to be about?
Where did that just go? I had that pulled up and I don't know where it went.
I guess I'll just go. For my paper, I'm probably going to talk about like my unseen barriers, like just the basically why I don't like writing. I just basically I don't want other people to read what I write. I don't want them to judge me based off of what I write, how I write it, how I word it. Is this going to make me sound dumb? Did I not use big enough words? Is it not that's my main barrier with writing. So I'll probably write
mine's basically almost the exact same.
It's probably a lot of people's, honestly.
I think that's going to be a lot of ours, and that's basically where mine is. It's about how I've been worried for 37 years about what people think of me and how they're going to take all of those things, and how they're going to react to it. Somebody's going to tell me I'm not smart enough, or they're going to, go and critique it, and I'm going to think that I made this big work of art, and it's going to be like, you failed at this.
Yes.
Yeah. Mine's going to be exactly the same, especially with the writing aspect. The reading aspect is probably going to be about how I kind of put barriers on myself to not do it. Like say, I don't have the time or I don't have the focus, but
yeah,
definitely want to start getting back into it.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting how the whole unit is kind of led up to this. And then I have done 3 appointments with the CWRC, I think it is. And that was really helpful. I really liked that. So I submitted the paper, and my boyfriend has helped me write my paper as well. He's kind of looked over it, but he wanted to be a little too helpful. And I was like, no, I'm going to.
That sounds like mine too. Whenever I had to write a paper last semester, he loves English, he loves writing and all that. He looked over it and he's like, okay, let's change this, let's do this. And I'm like, okay, no, you're done.
I
Like,
don't know.
Yeah.
You can annotate it all you want, but I was like, don't
Yeah.
change anything because I was like, it's gonna be my words, end of story. So, but
I had that same problem last semester.
I literally have the same problem too.
yeah, which I feel very lucky to have that issue. I'd rather have somebody in my corner helping me, wanting the best for me. So
Right.
you got to take it with a, gonna take it with a grain of salt sometimes.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm like, no, but I think it'll be really good. So yeah, I'm excited. All right, I'm going to stop recording. I think we're done here.